So welcome everyone, I'm Christina Derosa, I'm the Director of the Museum of Art, and I'm delighted to welcome Emily Trenholm, who will be speaking about her collages. Emily is an adjunct professor of art at the University of New Hampshire, and previously served as an adjunct professor of art at Southern Maine Community College in Brunswick. Her paintings and collages are shown throughout the Seacoast region, and she most recently exhibited at the Lewis Gallery in Portland, Maine. So welcome, Emily.
Thank you so much. Okay, so these works are paintings, and there is a bit of collage in them too. I think of them, I guess, mostly as paintings and drawings. So they were completed in 2020, last year, in a location behind my house. I was working from the stream that runs sort of in the woods behind where I live. And there was so much happening during that time, and it was like very emotional, very emotional period. So I found sort of solace like in this area where like I was working from, rushing water. There's, a lot of, I think I began these paintings in the springtime, and there's just a lot of water moving through. So that sort of rapid movement just captivated me, and I began drawing. So before that period, I had not really been working as regularly. I have two boys, and we were just talking about. The first one was born in 2013, so it was really important to me that I be with them and raise them, and so that's what I did. And I did teach at SMCC on the side, one class each semester as an outlet. But with the boys, we really spent so much time outside exploring the woods. In the property that we live on, and I think I tended to draw in my head, even though I wasn't making work. I was always thinking about it and drawing what I saw in front of me in shapes, like in my mind. And then once I got to this point where, because of the pandemic, my husband was home and working from home, and we had the boys at home, but he was able to watch them while I just went out to the stream and sort of just got in the zone and was able to make a significant amount of work. And it really, it opened up my practice again. In the past, I've used oil paint, and now this is acrylic and gouache and watercolor. And that was freeing for me too, to have this somewhat of a break and then come back into painting with a new medium and a new way of describing form. But I think becoming a parent really did change my work quite a bit. But yeah, drawing was a really wonderful way for me to begin working again and describing form, and then the color came back in, and then the collage as well, as I was sort of playing around with these like looser shapes. I don't know. There's a lot more, but are there any questions? Yes.
What inspires your use of like non-natural color in your nature pieces? Like that one in particular.
Great. Yeah. So I work on location, like painting from observation. And when I'm there, I take a while just to sit and sort of be present, and the color comes to me depending on what I see, but also I think how I'm feeling. And so I'm realizing that is where that color really comes from. And so a lot of it has to do with my emotional response to the landscape.
Do you work in the winter outside normally?
I do, yeah. So last winter I did, and it was relatively mild. So I go out on when it's 30 degrees and work in the snow. And I did several drawings of the trees and tree shapes last winter. And some painting, but I feel like the drawings are more successful. Maybe because they're quicker to complete. Usually when I'm working, I will create one piece in a single sitting, which is usually like 5 hours, 5 or 6 hours.
Many people enjoy working outdoor, working from nature, or either city or a nature environment.
Right.
They all find that as part of the necessary and their creative process. Some people even say clearly, nature is the best teacher. I think I'm one of the person working in nature. I wonder what is the nature to you? Obviously, the stream you're working from is not particularly stream. It's in the way you find inspiration from that particular subject. Can you say something about what's nature or your work process related to nature?
I don't see myself necessarily as an abstract painter. It is important for me to have something in front of me to look at, to make work from, at least to begin with. And so I find that nature does that for me, and it creates a structure of shapes for me to sort of work with and problem solve and figure out how these parts come together to create a composition. So I guess it allows me the right problems that I need to face. It's working outside is like I feel really comfortable there, and I'm an outdoorsy person, so that's really where I feel the most free to let my work out. Yeah. Thanks.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you, because you are moving away, you're starting with something concrete and you're kind of extrapolating from that. How do you choose your view, or what do you respond to? Because obviously these are not exact replications, or you're not trying to paint exactly what you're seeing. So how do you sort of frame out into terms, like choose that spot?
Yeah, it's hard to describe it. And I've heard a lot of artists try to describe this, but it's really this feeling, and it's a gut response, I think, to, for me, it's the particular, in this situation, it was the movement of the water, and then the rocks on the sides of the stream and how they interacted with each other. And every time I would walk out and work, there was always something new to see, and that was exciting too. Yeah. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Just sort of thinking about what influences your choice of where to paint.
Right.
And time of day.
Because it's not. I tend to paint at the same locations. The stream behind my house in this specific area where the water, there was like a few waterfalls that were small, but the waterfalls provided that movement and the rush of the water. I think I gravitate towards more complex, like structural problems, like rather than like painting a field with trees, like in the distance. To me, that doesn't excite me as much as a massive like branches or does that make sense? Yeah. So I'm really interested in the shapes, I think.
Okay.
Really
Have you always been kind of gravitated towards this tonal, somewhat abstracted form, or has this been like a realization that you've come to gradually throughout your journey?
Yeah, it's taken a long time, I think. So I was a BFA student at UNH here, and when I was studying with Brian and the other wonderful professors, I was painting portraits, very large portraits and self-portraits. And then I took a few years off before I went to graduate school at BU, and there I really worked with my color, and I went out into the city, and it wasn't the same as Maine. You know, I had never lived in a city before. It was a great experience, but it was too much. So I did a bunch of outdoor like landscape paintings, but then ended up bringing plants that my professor had in the hallways. I brought those plants into my studio and created this like indoor sort of like greenhouse type space and worked from the plants. Yeah.
Yeah, I just have a comment. I was a little bit late, so I apologize. I missed the beginning of your talk. But hearing you talk a little bit about working from nature and that piece that's behind you sounds like it came from the stream around your house. And I really like that. And I don't know that if I was asked without hearing you talk that I would know that it was a landscape, but it feels in some way that it's influenced somehow by the environment. Like there's something about it that feels like it's more natural than it is constructed. But it's an environment, like I don't know where that environment exists. Like I don't know if it's surreal or whimsical or otherworldly, but it like makes me think of all of those things, which is pretty engaging.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments or reflections on Emily's work? I can't see everybody around the corner, but. Well, thank you so much, Emily.
you.
It's a pleasure to hear about your work. Next, we'll be hearing from Beth, a historical associate, and Brett Gamache received his MFA from the University of New Hampshire in 2005 and has been teaching and exhibiting widely since then. He previously served as an adjunct professor of painting at Massachusetts College of Art and is the recipient of numerous awards, and this year received the Blanche Coleman Award. So welcome, Brett.
I just wanted to say that I feel very grateful to be a part of this show alongside Emily and former professors that I've had. I graduated here in 2005. And also very important to me is showing alongside my good friend Jason Gamache, who lost to cancer this past summer. We were roommates in Italy in the UNH program, and had a nice correspondence the last few months of his life. And I think of him often as I'm working, and I should say about 4 years ago, my wife and I moved to Ipswich, Massachusetts, and it's really become the center of my work. Is Ipswich is known for their sort of vast wetlands, and Crane Beach has these very impressive beach dunes there, which are only accessible by foot. And similar to what Emily mentioned during COVID, and also the birth of my son, things are very stressful, and hiking for me, this became a place to clear my mind. I would, and I still do. I hike with my materials out into the dunes, as much as an hour or two in, knowing that I have to come back an hour or two. So I pack a lunch and really make a day of it. The 5-hour block of time. And something about maybe the metaphor of the ups and downs of the path. I love the afternoon light there, where things get a little bit more high key and colorful, the long shadows, and sort of these like undulating hills. I'm just really intrigued by the forms. But what I've noticed is over these past 4 years that I've made a composition, and these are rather small. I was also having another show, some larger works, but I've found that a lot of the locations I would return to the next season to find them collapsed, a collapsed dune or a flooded area. I feel like Ipswich is sort of the front line of global warming. You really see it impact nature, and this, so I've been kind of almost recording thing, doing a similar painting each season to kind of see the effects, and this has sort of led to a project. Mentioned the Blanche Coleman Award, and I had proposed. Ipswich is also known for its river and estuaries, and I've always wanted to get out on the water to see the wetlands from different angles. And so I've put together a boat with the idea of having a studio boat, sort of Monet-like studio boat. And with the grant coming through, I was able to purchase an electric engine that has zero emissions and no carbon footprint. So my next sort of when good weather returns, my idea is to get out onto the water, to start to see the dunes from other angles and see the wetlands up close. I think for me also, just in terms of the process, it's very much about the process for me. I really, I love being in that state of creating. I think all artists sort of get hooked on that feeling. And although when I look at my work, it feels quite conservative in some ways, but I am, I feel like I'm taking chances in the moment. There's a lot of adding and subtracting, and I just love how there's all sorts of surprises in plein air painting that don't happen in the studio. And I kind of just try to relax and get into the flow and really let the painting lead me where it needs to go. So there's a lot of palette knife, pretty impasto paint. And I just really love landscape painting because of the changes, the tides coming up and going down, things that I didn't anticipate, clouds moving through and light fading. I think the idea, I think I'm drawn to that afternoon light as well, is because it gives me a sense of urgency. The light is going to be, it's not going to be there all day, so I have to work very quickly. And I like that. I like being sort of in the moment with all my senses heightened. I also think just that teaching has really fed my work in so many ways, trying to explain color to students. I've really come to really enjoy the mixing process and just sort of the magical quality of color, the way they interact and how to neutralize color. I feel like those two things kind of feed each other. I try to bring some of the ideas that I do in my work into my classroom. In the classroom, the energy that the students have kind of feeds my own work. And I would maybe just say lastly, I think becoming a father, it sort of opened my eyes a little bit more to how fragile the world is. And, you know, I don't know what form it will take, but I'm hoping that this green studio boat that I'm going to be launching and started to launch will somehow share some of the ephemeral beauty that's out there with people, and maybe in some way open other people's eyes.
But do you work in a series like when you're using go out to students? Do you tend to work one painting at a time, or do you also make sketches for things that you want to return to? Again, we can talk a little bit as it is.
Yeah.
Because it takes so long to get out there.
Yeah. I would say that I usually have a handful of paintings that I'm working on at one time. And I feel like these are quite fast and small. I think when I started this whole process, the scale was modest, just in terms of physically carrying things out back. But as I got more comfortable, I kind of know what time I have to go out there and certain routes that I can get back, and weather situations. I can take larger canvases. So I feel like at the beginning, I was sort of feeling my way through, kind of not really reproducing what I was looking at, but being honest to what I saw. And now I'm starting to, I guess, exaggerate and sort of enhance some of the forms and the undulations. It's slowly opening to maybe a more abstract or expressive feel to the paintings. I do go out in all seasons, and I really love, I don't know, just I just feel alive, I guess. That is really what it comes down to, and I really like that feeling. Being outside in all the elements just reminds me I'm alive.
Brandy, go ahead.
Yeah, it just reminded me, because you used the word urgency, and just a short article I just read about defining it with mind in relation to brain, which says urgency putting different components together. And I think to a degree that's a quite an ingredient of mind and art. I think that's wonderful you say that. And I see a little people around you in your work. I notice your admired artist has strong influence, who is extremely humble. An Italian living in a small apartment, share the living room with two sisters. But the artwork is incredibly rich because he just painted a few trees and houses. What he touched is simultaneously multiple. And I think the humbleness of Morandi, at least, I think it's very inspiring for many artists who decide to choose this role instead of big, do something small. It is insignificant, but have meaning insignificant, which I find in some degrees very touching for just a human. And just that's what I see from your work.
Yeah, and I picked up on that same word, urgency. And in looking at the painting on the left, when you were just hearing you describe the time and the experience, looking at those shadows, like that purpley gray blue, like I feel like I know that color, like I know that shadow. And I see snow when I look at that piece, and And it makes me think of all the times that I've been walking through a snow path or something, and you catch the sun, and just for an instance, you get that really intense shadow, and it is a shape of a color. Like, it's not just a gentle shadow, but it's a real crisp line. And I think that it's just so interesting to hear you talk about capturing, like feeling the desire to capture that quickly before the light fades or changes, and then just thinking about how time plays such a different role in different artists' lives. I'm not a painter, and so I think of time very differently as a sculptor and woodworker. And so to hear you talk about like the role that time plays is just very interesting.
One thing that gravitates me about these pieces and some of your other works that I've seen is your color palette. When you were talking about this kind of golden glow, is very. It's almost it's very 3D. One with your palette work, your palette knife work, and two with just the way you're able to convey your yellow tones. And a lot of your work is very interesting because it almost seems to emit light in a very fascinating way with the way for example, I'm looking at the seascape and I'm seeing that like one almost perfectly orange rock on the right, and it has such a real like kind of gut feeling to me that it almost feels metallic. So I find that is kind of hard to capture as a photographer because you always go for that golden glow, and it never quite comes out how you want it to. And so I find your mastery of getting that moment very interesting.
Thanks. Yeah, maybe it kind of goes back to having spent some time in Italy, having kind of broadened my palette, and I've kind of taken earth tones off the palette, and enjoy the challenge of mixing browns and grays with color, neutralizing, say, purple and yellow together. But as I'm working, color excites me as I'm working, and I feel like I try to put down the things that interest me and excite me as I'm seeing it. And I think that other painters that come to mind, Matisse is one that I think about a lot, and his quote about painting not things, but the differences between things. And so I'm constantly kind of visually juggling the different blues and browns, and kind of trying to touch the whole canvas at once. I think of it as juggling, sort of juggling color shapes.
And your idea for this kind of green boat painting studio, is this a somewhat newer idea, or is this something that you've wanted to do for a long time and finally had the access to?
Yeah, I mean, I've always had the desire to get out on the water. I've always enjoyed that experience, and over the last few years, I've started to accumulate the pieces necessary, and having this experience has just sort of opened my eyes and made me realize I can't be polluting the water. I can't be impacting the environment, and so it sort of all came together with the help of Brian as well, with a letter of recommendation to get the engine. And also the beauty of the electric engine is that it's very quiet, so I can approach wildlife from a safe distance, and not impact the noise, their habitat as well. So I'm excited to see what's out there.
Brett, when you are in the landscape, do you make drawings or do you go straight to painting?
I would say it's probably like 90% of the time I'm painting. But what I do find helpful is I'll actually take the paintings back to the studio and then draw from them. And that starts to lead to, oh, maybe I could exaggerate this in the next composition. I feel like, I don't know, I think back in the studio I have the luxury of sort of experimenting with no time restraints. And so I can build some value drawings, line drawings, and that sort of generates another painting idea for the next time I go out. Having said that, though, there are drawings sort of under these paintings often, like moth music, charcoal, and sort of working up a whole sort of scaffold to then paint on top of.
Well, thank you, Brett. I really appreciate your talk and hearing about your work. And Brett, I want to give you an opportunity both to plug your classes. Registration is still open, and if you're teaching, you want to let people know if they're interested in studying with you, what you're offering next semester.
Sure. I'm going to be offering an introduction to drawing course on Tuesday and Thursday mornings, and as well as a course called The Artist's Life, which will explore some writing and reading excerpts of various artists, but also hoping to utilize some Zoom conversations with artists and possibly make some studio visits or even some local shows.
And I'll be teaching introductory drawing on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as well as intermediate drawing on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you both very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.